in one of the latest cases of a criminal suspect going viral for their attractive mugshot. A Georgia sorority girl was arrested twice over a 2-week period in March. 20-year-old University of Athens student Lily Stewart was initially taken into custody during a traffic stop for speeding. According to police, she was going 85 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. Stewart's booking photo quickly garnered an array of gushing comments from doting fans who offered to pay her bail, wondered if her phone number was in the arrest report, and remarked on how the police had arrested Miss America. The speeding case was ultimately dismissed, but Stewart is now facing other charges due to an incident that occurred just weeks after her first arrest. In the second case, campus police arrested the Alpha Chi member at 5:30 in the morning on misdemeanor loitering or prowling and obstruction charges. Just like after her first arrest, Stewart flashed a beaming grin in her mugshot, which once again went viral. According to law enforcement, Stewart was with a group of people who tried to flee from officers as they approached the scene. She was taken into custody alongside 20-year-old Harvard football player Seamus Gil-Martin, who was charged with loitering or prowling, underage alcohol possession, and possession of a fake ID. Authorities did not elaborate on his connection to Stewart and the 2 other group members who were apprehended in the incident. Number 26. Mihaela Gabriela Bella Sorescu and Abigail J. Flanagan. Months after a father found an alarming note in his teen daughter's diary, the girl and her friend allegedly killed her mother. The victim, 47-year-old Andrea Mottram, was found murdered by cleaning staff inside a VRBO rental property in Washington City, Utah in late March of 2025. While searching the crime scene, responding officers found 2 cell phones, a purse that had been left in the toilet, a crumpled pair of bloody pants, and several knives. About a week and a half later, authorities announced the arrest of Mottram's daughter, Mihaela Gabriela Bella Sorescu, and Sorescu's friend, Abigail J. Flanagan. According to court documents, Mottram traveled to Las Vegas, Nevada on March 20th. She was accompanied by 2 juveniles, presumably Sorescu and Flanagan. 3 days later, her rental car was found abandoned in Cedar City, Utah. Based on her autopsy results, police would later conclude that Mottram was dead by the time the vehicle was discovered. Throughout the course of the investigation, detectives spoke with Sorescu's father, Frank, who told them about a disturbing diary entry of his daughter's that he had read months earlier. In it, Sorescu had written about how much she hated her mother and that she wanted to kill Mottram. An arrest affidavit states that Sorescu had been living in a residential treatment facility for 3 years leading up to her mother's death. Flanagan had also spent time in a treatment facility, although it's unclear whether they had lived in the same facility as Sorescu. Both teens are facing charges of first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and theft of a motor vehicle. Number 25. Rachell Diane Varela Gomez. In January 2025, 18-year-old high school senior Rachell Diane Varela Gomez was arrested in Florida for making online threats against Coral Springs Charter School, where she was a student at the time. According to an arrest report, the Coral Springs Police Department was tipped off to the threat by an FBI agent who revealed that Varela Gomez had threatened to shoot up the school. Security pulled the young woman out of class and booked her into custody at the Broward County Jail on 1 felony count of writing a threat to kill. Varela Gomez reportedly admitted to posting the threat on her private Snapchat story and told investigators that she did it because she was having a bad day. She went on to explain that she had failed a test because she had recently been out of the country due to a dental emergency, robbing her of any opportunity to study for the exam. Additionally, the teen said that she had no serious intentions of harming anyone and that she lacked both the weapons and means to accomplish her stated goal. She also admitted that she shouldn't have made the incriminating post, expressed regret for doing so, and apologized for her alarming words. Records show that Varela Gomez was released on pre-trial supervision after posting a $10,000 bond. She pleaded not guilty to the charge and the case is ongoing. Based on court documents, she appears to have resumed her studies and is currently only allowed to use the internet for school-related purposes. Number 24. Rogers McCloud Jr. 21-year-old Alabama State University student Jenia Grimes looked forward to all life held in store for her, but her future was abruptly cut short in late March of 2025 when she was shot to death in the community of War. Emergency responders found the criminal justice major suffering from multiple bullet wounds inside a vehicle and rushed her to the emergency room where she succumbed to her injuries a short while later. Shortly after the tragedy, Grimes's boyfriend and the father of her young child, 20-year-old Rogers B.B. McCloud Jr., told the young woman's family that she had died by her own hand. But this was not the case, according to prosecutors, who have since charged McCloud Jr. with capital murder in connection with Grimes' death. The case is now being described as a domestic violence killing, and McCloud is being held without bond at the Montgomery County Detention Center as he awaits his next court date. News reports state that the couple dated for roughly 2 years, leading up to Grimes' murder. A relative of the victim told Fox 5 Atlanta that nobody believed McCloud's story about how Grimes died, especially since she was reportedly planning to break up with McCloud when she was killed. The family is now raising the couple's son, who has essentially lost both of his parents due to his father's alleged crime. Number 23. Maquwell Fleming. During the summer of 2018, a Kennesaw, Georgia teenager named Maquwell Fleming was accused of luring a man she met on Instagram to a Walmart parking lot in Marietta and robbing him at gunpoint. According to a Cobb County law enforcement spokesperson, Fleming approached in a Dodge Dart, exited the vehicle, got back in, pointed a gun at the 18-year-old victim and stole $160 that he had just received from working. Fleming began to drive away, but the victim was determined not to let her steal his money. He drove after her and followed her into neighboring Cherokee County, where a coroner spotted the two speeding vehicles and contacted the police while following them. The victim eventually stopped and told the police that he had been robbed by a woman who he thought he was supposed to be going on a date with. He was able to provide Fleming's license plate number, and the Be on the Lookout alert was issued to law enforcement in the area. Officers later tracked down the car, but Fleming herself was nowhere to be found. They were able to find Fleming's mother, who cooperated and led the authorities to her apartment. Once there, the woman opened the front door and called Fleming outside, at which point the police took the teen into custody on a felony armed robbery charge. Number 22. Jasmine Oung. In March of 2023, a Canadian teenager named Jasmine Oung was arrested by Peel Regional Police based on allegations that she lured several men she met online into armed robberies. After the 18-year-old was taken into custody in Mississauga on 2 counts of robbery. News reports reveal that she was also wanted by the Toronto Police Service for a separate crime spree after falling at the center of an investigation that began several months earlier. According to law enforcement, Oung met her honey trap victims in the Moulton neighborhood and robbed them at knife point. She was also accused of carjacking several victims in Toronto. Throughout the summer of 2022, Oung was among 4 teenage suspects who were believed to be involved in the carjacking spree. The alleged culprits were accused of stealing multiple cars at gunpoint. Police revealed that some of the carjackings occurred in a similar fashion to the armed robberies Oung was named as a suspect in, with the unsuspecting victims being targeted in pre-arranged meetings, although it was unclear whether the victims initially connected with the culprits on dating sites. According to a news report, Oung and her alleged co-conspirators targeted the owners of high-end luxury vehicles. At the time Oung's arrest was announced, authorities said they believed there could be more victims that they were unaware of, and they urged anyone else who believed they had been targeted to come forward. People were reportedly quick to recognize the suspect's mugshot after it was posted online, further implicating Oung in the crimes that she was accused of. Number 21. Kyle Anger. 32-year-old Kenneth White met his untimely demise in 2017 when a group of 5 teens threw a large rock at his van from an overpass along Michigan's Interstate 75. The adolescents were playing a game they called overpassing, which involves throwing rocks at passing cars in an attempt to hit the moving vehicles. In this particular case, the consequences were deadly for the victim and life-altering for the perpetrators, who were charged accordingly for their actions. The accused ringleader of the group was 18-year-old Kyle Joseph Anger. In addition to being the oldest among the suspects, he was also the one who allegedly threw the rock that killed White. In 2019, Anger pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for other charges being dropped. He received a wide-ranging sentence of 39 months to 20 years in prison, with credit for more than 2 years of time spent in pre-trial detention. Records show that Anger was discharged in January 2023 after serving a little over 3 years in state prison. In addition to the time he spent behind bars, he was ordered to pay $7,000 in restitution to White's surviving family members. The other suspects, Mark Zakelski, Alexander Miller, Trevor Gray, and McCaden Payne, tried to get their cases tried in juvenile court, but the judge rejected the request due to the seriousness of the crimes they were accused of. They all took plea agreements for manslaughter and appealed the ruling to keep their cases in adult court. An appeals court ruled in their favor, and their cases were sent back to juvenile court, where they were sentenced to probation and community service, along with the requirement that they hold paying jobs. Number 20. The murder of Brianna Long. 21-year-old college student Brianna Long was finishing up a shift at her bartending job in Bremerton, Georgia on October 29, 2023, when an altercation outside the establishment led to an exchange of gunfire. She and a co-worker were struck by stray bullets, and Long died from her injuries after being rushed to the hospital. The shooting initially went unsolved, and at some point it became unclear whether justice would ever be served. 3 months after Long's death, authorities offered a $25,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction in the case. But the multi-agency investigation continued for more than a year, with local and state law enforcement working together to get to the bottom of the case. Finally, in early March of 2025, 23-year-old Cyan Clayton and 21-year-old Kimoni Green were each charged with 1 count of malice murder in connection with Long's death. Both suspects hailed from Lowndes County, but were already in custody for separate, unrelated cases out of Georgia and Florida when the new charges were announced. Clayton and Green are accused of being members of a gang called 528 and have been named in a 44-count racketeering indictment. The gang has reportedly been linked to an array of crimes, including murders, robberies, assaults, and more. Long's death is considered a casualty of the gang's unlawful activities, according to the GBI. The suspects were likely in the area seeking to settle a dispute with rival gang members on the night of the shooting. The tragedy is being cited as an example of how gang activity impacts innocent, law-abiding civilians who simply happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Number 19. Christopher Taulbee. 20-year-old Dixiana Brenard and her boyfriend, 24-year-old Charles Chuck Calloway, were brutally murdered in Bourbon County, Kentucky on the morning of Thursday, April 3rd, 2025. Brenard was shot in the head while Calloway had been stabbed in the throat and beaten with a baseball bat. Authorities identified the suspect as 19-year-old Christopher Taulbee, who has a dating history with Brenard and shares a child with the victim. Taulbee was taken into custody after a passing member of law enforcement spotted a vehicle with a flat tire and a missing driver's side door at around 8 o'clock in the morning. According to court documents, he was inside the vehicle in an unclothed state with blood on his hands and chest, and he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He was arrested on suspicion of 2 counts of murder and has pleaded not guilty to the charges. Following Taulbee's arraignment, Calloway's loved ones shared their grief with local news station Fox 56. The victim's sister, Crystal Brown, told the media outlet that her brother didn't deserve what happened to him, while Calloway's brother said that he never would have harmed anyone. Both family members expressed their shock and dismay at Taulbee's apparent decision to take Brenard and Calloway away from their young children, who must now come to terms with the untimely death of a parent. Taulbee remains in custody without bail while awaiting a preliminary hearing. Number 18. Robert Paljusevic. A 21-year-old Michigan man is accused of trying to kill his co-worker at the hospital where they worked because he was upset about not being invited to the victim's father's funeral, according to sources familiar with the case. 21-year-old Robert Paljusevic of Macomb Township was bizarrely possessive of his friend when he learned that he wasn't invited to the victim's father's funeral. In late March of 2025, Paljusevic allegedly urinated on a brochure containing information about the event, then opened fire on the 25-year-old victim in the hospital's parking garage, striking him in the arm. Paljusevic fled the scene and the hospital went into lockdown during the ensuing manhunt. Roughly 2.5 hours later, police arrested the accused shooter at his family's residence, although the gun used to commit the crime and Paljusevic's cell phone have yet to be recovered. The victim survived, and Paljusevic is currently detained on suspicion of assault with intent to murder and illegal gun charges. And while he's accused of being possessive of the victim, his older brother, Anton, offered a different perspective during an interview with ABC7. Anton claimed that Robert is not the monster he's being portrayed as, and described his younger brother as having a heart of gold, although he did not offer a potential explanation for Robert's actions. Number 17. Ronald Dykes. When several weeks passed without any arrests after the murder of 19-year-old Hazelhurst, Georgia resident Gary Riles, in early March of 2025, the young father of 2 family began to worry that the crime would never be solved. Fearful that the case was going to go cold, they pushed for answers. They can now rest easy, knowing that someone has been charged, but they're left to grapple with the difficult realization that no amount of prison time will ever feel like justice. Riles was found suffering from a gunshot wound On March 10th, he succumbed to his injuries after being rushed to the emergency room. On March 28th, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations announced the arrest of 21-year-old Ronald Dykes, who is facing a voluntary manslaughter charge in connection with the case. According to news reports, the decision not to charge Dykes with murder appears to stem from the apparent belief that he may have been provoked prior to pulling the trigger. Under state law, a killing constitutes voluntary manslaughter rather than murder when it results from a sudden, violent, and irresistible passion resulting from serious provocation sufficient to excite such passion in a reasonable person. Following Dykes' arrest, a law enforcement official told local news outlet WMAZ that the investigation is ongoing and anyone with information on the case is encouraged to contact the authorities and share what they know. Number 16. Hector David Sagastume Rivas. 52-year-old mother of 5, Camilla Williams, was found dead outside a Marietta, Georgia home on the morning of Thursday, March 13th, 2025. Police discovered her body in some bushes shortly before 8:30 a.m. while responding to a call about a person down at the residence, and the 21-year-old suspect named Hector David Sagastume Rivas was subsequently charged with the victim's murder. According to an arrest warrant, Sagastume Rivas is accused of strangling Williams until she fell unconscious, then asphyxiating her to death by pressing his knees and body weight into her neck. Speaking with local news outlet 11 Alive, Williams' niece Danielle said that she was unsure whether her aunt knew the accused killer. A SWAT team descended on a local address in search of Sagastume Rivas, but their initial attempt to arrest the suspect was unsuccessful. Law enforcement managed to eventually apprehend the suspected murderer, who remains in custody without bond after being deemed a danger to the community. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Sagastume Rivas was in the United States illegally at the time of the murder. He unlawfully entered the country in March of 2021, and he was arrested by Border Patrol, but he was subsequently released and managed to stay in America even after his deportation was ordered in July of 2023. Following the accused killer's arrest, Immigration and Customs Enforcement filed an immigration detainer with the Cobb County Jail, which means that Sagastume Rivas will be transferred to the custody of federal authorities if he's released from local or state custody at any point in the future. Number 15. Luca Mangiarano. An accused bank robber in Texas made an unconventional getaway in December of 2018 when he fled the scene on an e-scooter. According to reports, 19-year-old Luca Mangiarano entered a BBVA Compass Bank branch in downtown Austin wearing a hoodie and approached a teller with a note demanding money. The note reportedly stated, "This is a robbery. Please give me all your 100s and 50s in an envelope and everything will be okay." Fearing what Mangiarano might do if she objected to the written order, the teller complied and handed over the cash. Another bank employee reported seeing Mangiarano riding away on a dockless e-scooter. At the time, the worker was unaware of the robbery. His description of the fleeing thief was corroborated by surveillance footage, and investigators determined that the scooter had been rented through Uber. They were able to obtain the account details, which led them to Mangiarano. Additional findings through social media and cell phone location data strengthened law enforcement's suspicions that they had identified the correct suspect, and Mangiarano was arrested on one count of robbery by threat. While the outcome of the case is unclear, state and federal prison records show that no one by Mangiarano's name is currently serving time, indicating that he either managed to avoid a prison sentence or has finished paying his debt to society. Number 14. Leslie Garcia-Juarez. In March of 2021, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation announced charges against a teenager named Leslie Garcia-Juarez for a murder that had occurred more than a year earlier. At the time, she was already accused of an unrelated killing. According to news reports, Garcia-Juarez was taken into custody in late 2020 in connection with the murder of 22-year-old Duluth resident Adath Amable, who was shot inside an apartment just days after Christmas. Several months later, authorities charged the young woman with the murder of 19-year-old Osiel Montano of Norcross, who was killed in December of 2019. Montano was found dead from a gunshot wound inside an abandoned apartment almost a year to the day before Amable was killed. He had suffered a single gunshot wound to the head and State investigators managed to link Garcia-Juarez to the crime after local law enforcement requested the GBI's assistance with the case. When the authorities announced the charges against Garcia-Juarez for Montano's murder, the investigation was ongoing, and anyone with information was encouraged to share what they knew. Garcia-Juarez was charged with felony murder and aggravated assault in connection with Amable's death, and she faced the same charges for the killing of Montano. At the time the charges were announced, she was being held at a juvenile detention center. Records show that she was convicted in both cases and is serving prison time, but the length of her sentence is unknown. Number 13. Kaylee and Knosala. Shortly after 9 p.m. on a Friday night in September 2017, police were called to a hotel in Grand Junction, Colorado, where a man had been robbed at gunpoint after falling victim to a prostitution scam. Officers responded to the Ipswich Inn, where the victim told them that two armed men had stolen $1,600 from him inside one of the motel's rooms. He admitted that he came to the property in response to an online escorting ad and was expecting to meet with a woman who identified herself over the phone as Kaylee. Upon arriving at the room, the man was welcomed inside by a female suspect, only to be ambushed moments later by the two masked thieves. In the meantime, another female suspect exited the bathroom. The victim accused his assailants of knocking him to the floor and pointing a gun at his head while demanding money, which he handed over without hesitation. Despite the terrifying circumstances he found himself in, he was able to memorize the license plate number of a Honda Civic that he saw the two women leaving the property in. Based on this information, investigators identified one of the suspects as 21-year-old Kaylee Ann Knosala. She reportedly admitted to her role in the crime and implicated her boyfriend, Will Free, as the mastermind of the robbery. At the time Knosala's arrest was announced, the other three suspects remained at large. It's unclear whether they were ever caught, but records show that no one by Knosala's name is currently serving time in the Colorado State prison system. Number 12. Jonni Hayes. On March 22, 2018, a young woman entered a Chase Bank branch in Bellevue, Washington, and handed the teller a note demanding all of their $50 and $100 bills. The note further instructed the employee not to mention the robbery to anyone and stated that as long as they cooperated, no one would get hurt. After collecting the cash, the robber left without further incident. A fingerprint on the demand note was later matched to 24-year-old Jonni Hayes, who had unwisely posted photos of herself posing with the ill-gotten money on social media. While searching the suspect's residence, police found clothing matching the outfit that she appeared to be wearing in footage of the robbery. According to court documents, Hayes only made off with $101, and she committed the heist under dire circumstances. At the time, she was reportedly homeless, unemployed, and in desperate need of rehabilitation for a drug habit. During questioning, Hayes revealed that she came up with the idea to rob a bank while driving around with her husband. While the outcome of her criminal case is unclear, the results of a simple Google search indicate that Hayes has pursued a music career in recent years, indicating that she has made a concerted effort to take her life down a more productive path. Number 11. Jabari McGee. Shortly before 1:30 a.m. on Friday, April 4th, 2025, police in Oak Park, Illinois, responded to a report of shots fired. Upon arriving at the scene, officers found 54-year-old Corey Gates of South Holland lying in the street with a gunshot wound. He died from his injuries, but there was a nearby witness who told investigators that 5 suspects had fled the scene. Not far from the scene, officers located a group of adult males and teenage boys, matching the description given by the witness. 6 individuals were taken into custody, including 3 men and 3 boys, and all but one of the suspects were released without charges after undergoing questioning. The accused shooter, 20-year-old Jabari McGee, remains in custody on a first-degree murder charge. According to news reports, the crime began as an attempted carjacking. The victim's family told ABC7 that Gates, a Gulf War veteran, fought back even during his final moments in an attempt to stop the suspects from stealing his vehicle. Gates was working as a phlebotomist and was on his way home from work when he was targeted in what appeared to be a random fashion, leaving his loved ones devastated and demanding justice for his untimely death. In the meantime, McGee remains held without bail at the Cook County Jail. Number 10. Nickalous Benjamin. 19-year-old University of Houston student Pius Dio went out after a family dinner in Harris County, Texas on February 8, 2025 and was never seen alive again. The following day, his car was found abandoned in Pasadena, roughly 6 miles from the family's residence, with the driver's side window smashed in and blood on the front seat. His shoes were inside the vehicle, initially leaving his loved ones to believe he had been kidnapped. Several weeks later, on March 1st, Dio's highly decomposed body was found dumped in a field. He had been shot in the head and the neck, and his death was ruled a homicide. Nearly 3 weeks after the discovery of Dio's remains, authorities announced the arrest of 20-year-old Nickalous Benjamin on suspicion of murder and tampering with a human corpse. Authorities have released limited details on the circumstances surrounding the crime and the events that they believe led up to the deadly shooting. It's also unclear whether Dio and the accused killer knew one another, and if so, what the nature of their previous connection is. Benjamin remains in custody at the Harris County Jail with bond set at $400,000 as he awaits his next court hearing, which is scheduled for June 17th. Number 9. Isaiah Francis. On the evening of Friday, November 8th, 2024, emergency responders were called to a Kansas City, Missouri intersection where they found 66-year-old Dennis R. Griffin slumped over and unresponsive in his pickup truck. A much younger male suspect had shot him from outside the vehicle in broad daylight in an apparent road rage incident, leaving the truck's windows shattered after being struck by multiple bullets. By the time police arrived, the gunman had fled the scene. The vehicle he was seen speeding away in was found several days later, but the shooter himself remained at large. Shortly after the shooting, law enforcement appealed to the public for information, leading to the arrest of a suspect, but the case went unsolved until April 2025, when 21-year-old Isaiah Francis was taken into custody on suspicion of second-degree murder and armed criminal action. According to law enforcement, Francis admitted to being in the vehicle associated with the shooting, but tried to pin the crime on the victim of a separate homicide. Investigators ruled out this claim after establishing through cell phone location data that the person was nowhere near the crime scene when the shooting occurred. If convicted as charged, Francis could face life in prison. Number 8. Jacob Gonzalez, in what authorities are describing as a deadly road rage shooting. 54-year-old Adan Mares was gunned down in cold blood along a service road in Austin, Texas in March of 2025. Law enforcement responded to the scene near the University of Texas campus after receiving reports of a heated confrontation between motorists that spanned several miles. According to police, Mares exited his vehicle at a traffic light and confronted the other driver, 21-year-old Jacob Gonzalez, who opened fire on him despite the victim being unarmed at the time. The deadly encounter marked Austin's 7th homicide of 2025, and investigators believe that it may have been captured on video. Even after Gonzalez was taken into custody on a murder charge, authorities appeal to the public for any footage that may have been recorded or other information which could assist with the investigation. Gonzalez reportedly told police that he meant to fire a warning shot and that he had no intention of harming Mares. He then changed his story, telling investigators that he believed Mares was about to swing on him and that the victim was running toward him when he collapsed. According to the most recent available updates on the case, Gonzalez is being held in custody with bond set at $1 million. Number 7. Garon Nathaniel Killian and Kaylee Latod Simpson. Shortly before 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, April 6th, 2025, police responded to a reported incident near a shuttered Party City store in Catawba County, North Carolina. Officers spoke with 3 alleged victims at the scene, including 2 35-year-old males from Morganton and Newton, as well as a 27-year-old woman from Newton. The trio reportedly told law enforcement that they had gotten into a physical altercation with 2 male suspects during a gathering in the parking lot. Multiple shots had been fired into the crowd, making everyone at the scene fortunate that they emerged from the incident unscathed. Just minutes later, police located the suspect's vehicle. Officers arrested 20-year-old Garon Nathaniel Killian of Lenoir and 18-year-old Kaylee Latod Simpson of Hickory. The men are each facing 7 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 7 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with the intent to kill, going armed to the terror of the public, and discharging firearm in the city limits. Killian and Simpson were booked into the Catawba County Jail in lieu of $100,000 bond each, and Killian appears to remain in custody while Simpson is absent from jail records. At the time their arrests were announced, the investigation into the case was ongoing and police were urging anyone with information to contact the authorities. Number 6. Angeles Flores. At a time when Chicago's law-abiding residents are fed up with the city's gun violence, a young woman is accused of committing a shooting at a liquor store with no apparent regard for the safety of innocent civilians. The incident in question occurred shortly before 10:30 p.m. on Friday, March 14, 2025, when an argument broke out between two groups of people inside Goldmore Food and Liquors on West 51st Street. During the altercation, a female suspect, later identified as 21-year-old Angeles Flores, pulled the gun and began shooting. A few moments later, a male suspect took the gun from Flores and fired several more shots, prompting a man in the opposing group to also open fire. Two male victims, aged 22 and 48 years old, were taken to the emergency room with critical gunshot wounds, while two other victims suffered non-life-threatening injuries, including a gunshot wound to the hand. Flores showed up at the hospital with gunshot wounds to her heel and thigh and was taken into custody about 90 minutes after the shooting occurred. He was charged with 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder and 1 count of aggravated discharge of a firearm in an occupied building. Flores remains in custody without bond, and it's unclear whether any of the other suspects have been arrested. Number 5. Nickalous Jenkins. 21-year-old Shaquise Head was found clinging to life with a gunshot wound to the head in Warner Robins, Georgia on March 28, 2025. He was rushed to the emergency room in critical condition and died from his injuries 4 days later. On April 1st, witnesses provided police with descriptions of 2 suspects, including the killer, who was seen shooting the victim and fleeing the scene just before 6 o'clock p.m. One of the suspects was released after investigators brought him in for questioning and determined that he did not participate in the crime. The accused shooter, Nickalous Jenkins, was arrested several days after the incident and remains in custody on charges of homicide, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Authorities have yet to reveal an alleged motive for the killing and have not gone into detail about the circumstances surrounding the deadly confrontation. Number 4. Jaiden Landis. 1 person was killed, 2 others were injured, and another landed himself in jail following a shooting in Fort Wayne, Indiana, on the evening of Thursday, March 20th. 2025. Police found the 3 victims at the scene while responding to the incident shortly before 9 o'clock p.m. A high school-aged young man named Chase Watson was pronounced dead at the scene, and one of the 2 surviving victims was taken to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, while the other suffered non-life-threatening wounds. Watson died from multiple gunshot wounds and the case was ruled a homicide. Less than 24 hours later, authorities announced the arrest of 18-year-old Jaiden Michael Landis in connection with the case. Records show that he remains in custody without bond at the Allen County Jail, with the listed charges including 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of robbery. Court documents identify the 2 surviving victims as friends and fellow classmates of Landis, who attended the same high school as the suspect. Police identified a vehicle connected to the suspect using surveillance footage from a nearby residence, which appeared to show a man matching Landis's description fleeing from a car on foot after the shooting. While searching the car, investigators found 3 semi-automatic handguns and several cell phones, one of which led them to Landis. According to law enforcement, Landis provided a false account of events which conflicted with the evidence, including stippling marks caused by unburned gunpowder coming in contact with his skin. Number 3. The murder of Juan Pablo Alaman. 40-year-old Juan Pablo Alaman was shot dead on the northwest side of Columbus, Ohio on June 9, 2023. He was found suffering from a single gunshot wound inside an apartment and was pronounced dead at the scene by emergency responders after it became clear that he could not be revived through life-saving efforts. Surveillance footage reportedly showed 4 individuals fleeing from the apartment on the day of Alaman's murder, including 2 female suspects. One of the women, 20-year-old Amira Reed, was arrested on suspicion of murder in June of 2024. She remains in custody amid the ongoing case. A second female suspect, 20-year-old Stephanie Denise Moore, was charged with murder, aggravated murder, robbery, and tampering with evidence in July of 2024 after turning herself into the authorities. Records show that she was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and robbery and is serving prison time with a projected parole date of November 2038. In March of 2025, authorities announced the arrest of 21-year-old Nehemiah Garnett in connection with the case. Like the other suspects, Garnett is facing murder and robbery charges. According to police, both Moore and Reed identified him as the mastermind of the crime. The women also claimed that Garnett brought the murder weapon and cell phone location data reportedly placed him at the scene when the killing occurred. The fourth suspect appears to remain at large. Today's topic was requested by Michael Chandler 7098 and Nikki123BXD. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. The murder of Remedy Jennings-Leaphart. 4 South Carolina men between the ages of 19 and 23 are facing criminal charges that could potentially put them away for life, following the January 2025 shooting death of 21-year-old Remedy Jennings-Leaphart. The incident occurred just before 7 p.m. in Monetta, and Jennings-Leaphart was driven to his mother's residence in Batesburg, Leesville by an unknown individual. Following his arrival at the home, the young man's family rushed him to a nearby hospital where he died from his injuries. In mid-February, nearly 3 weeks after the shooting, police announced the arrests of 19-year-old Demarion Morris, 20-year-old Latrez Nicholson, 20-year-old Xavier Abner, and 23-year-old Wandricus Brunson. Each of the suspects is charged with murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and all 4 of the young men are being held without bail at the Aiken County Jail. The circumstances leading up to Jennings-Leaphart's death remain unclear. Number 1. Rickey Johnson. On Monday, February 3rd, 2025, a crime witness in Choctaw County, Oklahoma, reported hearing a gunshot and seeing a young man walking away from an overgrown lot. Shortly thereafter, she tried to talk to the suspect, later identified as 21-year-old Rickey Johnson, but he ignored her and left the scene in a vehicle. The woman told police that she saw 2 men walking toward the scene, but only one ever walked away. After Johnson fled, she went over to where she had seen them talking and found 21-year-old Dawson Bostic unresponsive with a gunshot wound. Bostic died from his injuries at a nearby hospital, and Johnson was brought in for questioning. During his conversation with investigators, Johnson explained that he and Bostic were driving toward Texas and that he asked Bostic to turn around because he was on probation at the time and was therefore not allowed to leave the state. Bostic then drove to a casino in Grant, but Johnson didn't want to spend time at the establishment, so he drove off in Bostic's car. Despite offering this much information, Johnson stopped talking when police questioned him about the shooting. He remains in custody without bond at the Choctaw County Jail on a first-degree murder charge. Thanks for watching. Hypothetically, would you spend 3 years in prison now if it meant you would add 10 years to your lifespan? And why or why not? Let us know in the comments section below.